I want you to picture this. You rip open a bag of chips, ready for that first crunchy bite, and the bag suddenly looks like it's 70% air. Your brain instantly does the math. I paid for chips, not oxygen. And for a second, it feels like you got cheated. But here's the twist. That air is usually not even air, and it's not there to scam you. It's there to protect the chips, protect the flavor, and protect the company from one thing that ruins chips faster than almost anything else: oxygen. Today I'll show you exactly why chip bags are so puffy, what gas is really inside them, what would happen if they were packed full, why vacuum sealing would actually be worse, and how a few invisible molecules decide whether your chips taste fresh or taste like sad, stale cardboard. Let's start with the part no one expects. Most chip bags are filled with nitrogen. Nitrogen is an inert gas, which is a fancy way of saying it doesn't react much. Oxygen, on the other hand, is extremely reactive, and potato chips are basically thin, crispy slices coated with oils and tiny pores. That oil and oxygen are not friends. When oxygen reacts with oils, the oils oxidize. Oxidized oil tastes stale, weird, sometimes even slightly bitter, like the chip has aged. This is one major reason why companies flush chip bags with nitrogen, to push oxygen out and slow down that oxidation. So the bag isn't inflated to trick you. It's inflated to create a safer atmosphere for the chips. Now you might be thinking, okay, fine, but why so much of it? Because the gas is doing two jobs at once. Job number one, it's a bodyguard for freshness. The more oxygen you remove from the bag, the longer the chips can sit on a shelf without going stale. Manufacturers use a process often described as gas flushing, basically replacing oxygen-containing air with an inert gas like nitrogen to preserve freshness. Job number two, it's an airbag. Chips are fragile. They're thin, brittle, and stacked loosely. Now imagine these bags during shipping, thrown onto pallets, stacked in warehouses, vibrating in trucks, pressed under other packages, dropped, bumped, squeezed. If the bag had no pillow, the chips would arrive as dust. That puffiness is shock absorption. Companies literally rely on that cushion of gas, so the chips can survive the supply chain and still look like chips when you open the bag. So when people complain, it's mostly air. The funny truth is that air is basically packaging technology doing its job. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Why not just vacuum seal chips? Vacuum sealing is great for tougher foods, but for chips it would be a disaster. If you sucked all the air out, the pressure outside the bag would crush inward. The chips would get smashed, and because chips are oily and thin, they don't spring back. You'd open a perfectly sealed bag of perfectly preserved crumbs. So, chip bags are not designed like fill it to the top. They're designed like protect a fragile product. That's why you'll sometimes hear packaging people call it a pillow pack concept. The bag is part product, part protective cushion. Now let's address the biggest misunderstanding. Does the company use big bags to give less chips? This is where it gets tricky, because two things can be true at once. Yes, companies often reduce net weight over time. That's a real business practice sometimes called shrinkflation. But that's not the same question as, why is the bag filled with air? Because, legally, you're not paying for the size of the bag. You're paying for the net weight written on the front. The bag can be huge and still contain the exact weight promised. The reason the bag feels too big is because chip volume is mostly empty space. Chips are not dense like rice or sugar. They're thin, irregular, and full of air pockets themselves. If you packed them tight, you'd crush them. So you need extra space to let them exist without turning into powder. Now picture the alternative world where every bag is full. The first bag you open at home might be full and pretty, but the one that traveled far, sat under heavy boxes, or got bumped in transit, it would be broken. And customers hate broken chips. They complain, they return, they stop trusting that brand. So from a company's perspective, that air is not wasted space, it's insurance. Now let's zoom in on what gas it actually is. When you open a bag, you might think you're breathing chip air, but it's usually nitrogen, not oxygen-rich air. The point is to keep oxygen levels down, because oxygen accelerates staleness and rancidity, and nitrogen is already the most common gas in Earth's atmosphere. So it's not some weird chemical trick. It's literally the most normal gas around us, just used in a smart way. Now you may be wondering, if there's nitrogen, does it make chips last forever? No. It just slows down the main enemy, oxidation. Chips still go stale for other reasons too, like moisture. Moisture is another silent killer of crunch. If chips absorb moisture from the air, they lose crispness. That's why packaging film matters so much. Chip bags are typically made with materials designed to block moisture and oxygen. The nitrogen helps inside, and the bag material helps from the outside. It's like two layers of defense, atmosphere plus barrier. So if you ever opened a bag and it was stale even before the date, it might not be a conspiracy. It could be a seal issue, a tiny pinhole, or storage conditions that allowed oxygen or moisture in. And that brings us to a strange little clue, the deflated bag. If you pick up a bag of chips in a store and it's totally flat, that can mean the seal failed. And if oxygen got in, the chips may be stale. The puffiness is sometimes a sign that the protective atmosphere is still intact. Now, here's another twist that makes people even more suspicious. Sometimes you open a bag and it looks half empty, but the chips are intact and fresh. That's because of settling. Chips shift during shipping. They settle toward the bottom. The gas moves to the top. The bag looks emptier even if the weight is correct. Imagine a suitcase. You can shake it and everything sinks. The air rises. Same thing. Now let's talk about the part nobody talks about. Why your chips can taste stale even when they're not old. Because oxidation doesn't always taste like old. It can taste like off. When oil oxidizes, it produces compounds that your nose detects quickly. That's why some chips taste weird even if they're within date. The protective nitrogen slows that process dramatically by reducing oxygen exposure. So, in a weird way, the puffiness is protecting not only the crunch, but the smell. Now let's answer the most direct question. Is it a scam? If the weight on the bag matches what you get, then no, by design, it's not a scam. It's packaging. But your frustration is still understandable, because humans judge value by visual fullness. We see a big bag and expect it to be full. That's a normal brain shortcut. The chip industry knows that. And yes, sometimes they choose larger bags because bigger bags catch attention on shelves. But the core reason for the gas is real science, oxygen removal and crush protection. So here's the simple truth, that puffiness is a protective system, like an airbag and a freshness vault combined. And once you know that, you can start judging chips the right way. Look at the weight. Check the seal. Avoid bags that feel flat. And remember, you're not buying a bag full of chips. You're buying chips that survived the journey. So, the next time you open a bag and see too much air, don't think scam. Think, this is the reason my chips are still crunchy. If this surprised you, hit like, because it tells YouTube to show this to more curious people who are one snack away from starting a conspiracy theory. And comment this. What other packaging mystery should we uncover next? Soda cans, water bottles, candy wrappers, coffee bags. Subscribe to Stories of Simple Things, because sometimes the biggest secrets are hiding in the simplest snacks.